Assalamu alaikum students, this is Sir Ahmed Hussain from English department of SMB QAPS Public School Higher Secondary section. So my students, today we are going to discuss a poem, the fourth poem of our poetry section, that is the lines from an essay on man. Similarly in the previous poem, in poem number 3, we also discussed the poem that was also named as the lines from Samson Agonist. In a similar fashion, these are also the lines from an epic work of Alexander Pope, that is the essay on man. So indeed, essay on man is the work of Alexander Pope, in which he has reflected the philosophical aspects of the fate and fortune, and also the nature and the importance of the hope. Moreover, he has also elaborated the causes of restlessness of human soul in this world. So overall, that is the work of Alexander Pope, in which he has written in a poetic manner about these characteristics and these aspects of the man, and he named that work as Essay on Man. But as I right now mentioned, that like the previous poem, lines from Samson Agonist, that those lines that the poem was extracted out from Samson Agonist, in a similar fashion these lines are extracted out from the work Essay on Man, and the work is done by Alexander Pope. So now students, these lines are now the part of our poetry section, and it is indeed the fourth poem of our book. So let's move towards the text of the poem. So my students, now you can clearly observe on your screen the text that is mentioned here, and indeed it is the these are the opening lines of the poem according to the book, and in which the poet says, "Heaven from all creatures hides the book of fate. All but the page prescribed their present state. From brutes what man? From man what spirits know? Or who could suffer being here below?" My students, this is the first stanza of this poem, the lines from an essay on man, and in the opening lines of the poem, the pope has presented the care and the kindness displayed by the God's providence to his creatures by making them ignorant to their future fate. Indeed, he says that God has made his creatures blind to their future. They know very little or nothing of what is going to happen to them. They don't know what sorrows or sufferings lie in store for them. They only know about their present. That's why the poet has given the example of brutes, man and spirits. That's why he says that God has done this according to the specific system, because he has given the example here that, for instance, angels, being spiritual beings, know more than man does. The man being superior to the animals, and here brutes means animals, and angels, spirits means angels. So my students, here the man being superior to the animals knows more than they do, and the animals being at the bottom of hierarchy know nothing about their future. It's all about the future that poet justifies this policy of providence as being kind and beneficial. This is intended to keep the cycle of life going, since the life on this planet is full of sorrows, sufferings, disappointments, disease and death. We would have tried to make an end to our life before the fall of the future calamity if we had the slightest knowledge of our future. So my students, here in this poem the poem that is entitled An Essay on Man, in which he has discussed it in his typical style, the nature, conduct and the destiny of the man, and that's why he has explained it in his first stanza here. That is also the part of our textbook, that are poetry books. So then overall, in the opening lines of the poem, the poet says that God has concealed the future and fate from all the creatures. They are absolutely unaware of the forthcoming event. God has hidden from animals what has given to man, and from man what he has given to the angels, otherwise it would be impossible to live herein. Thus, God has given to his creatures only what they can afford to know. So that was all about the explanation of the first stanza. Now let's move towards the second stanza, in which the poet says, "The lamb thy rod dooms to bleed today. Had he thy reason, would he skip and play? Pleased to the last, he crops the flowery food and licks the hand just raised to shed his blood." So my students, in these lines where the example of lamb has been given by the poet, and while connecting the first stanza with the second one, in which in the first stanza it was elaborated by the poet about the blessing of future, that which is considered as the blessing by the poet, and now right in the second stanza the poet is going to connect that theme and that philosophy by giving the example of the lamb here. What does he says? He says that lamb does not know that it is going to be sacrificed. Would it know, it would not skip and play. Means, had he thy reason, would he skip and play? Man knows that lamb is going to be sacrificed and he can afford this knowledge, but the lamb cannot. Pleased to the last, it licks the hand which is going to shed its blood. That's why the poet says, pleased to the last, he crops the flowery food and licks the hand just ready to shed his blood. Furthermore, the poet says that God remains indifferent to the day-to-day happenings and rise or a fall of a human beings, and in his eyes the death or the decline of a great hero or a death of a tiny bird are incidents of a similar significance. So here my students, these were indeed the example presented by the poet, in which he tries to explain about the future, and he considers it as a blessing. But here in the second stanza, the poet is going to explain it, is going to connect it, is going to validate his argument by giving an example of the lamb, that it is not going to lick the hand if that lamb knows that the hand that is giving him some food is going to sacrifice it. So in that case, it would be rather difficult for the animal. So how it would be possible for a human being to know what is going on in the future? So my students, that was all about the poem Lines from an Essay on Man. Indeed, this is a first part of a video lecture in which we have described it, and initially we discussed its theme, and the theme was indeed the blessing of a future. And indeed, Alexander Pope, who occupies a very prominent position in the domain of English literature, and also he was the representative poet of the 18th century and also known as the Augustan age, the age of satire and heroic couplets. And also this is one of this epic work, and this example of the poem is one of the work of Alexander Pope in that literary task. So that's why it is also in this essay, because basically This is the essay written in the poetic form, and where the poet has defined a philosophical, didactic, thought-provoking and the soul-stirring poem, and it was addressed by the Pope to Bolingbroke, where he has clearly mentioned and elaborated this poem. So hope you have comprehend these two stanzas, and inshallah in the subsequent video lecture, that will be a second video lecture and the part 2 of this poem, inshallah we'll further discuss the remaining poem. Thank you so much.